Welcome into another edition of the Vegas Squares podcast. An interesting week in the world of sports. A lot of things were going on. Some were expected, some were not expected. Everything was definitely an interesting scenario. What do you think about the week in sports?
A lot of huge games in the NCAA football world, as well as games in the NFL to make or break teams.
Yeah, the NCAA had a lot of games that were going to shake up the playoffs. Did not disappoint.
It definitely stirred it up.
Couple teams forgot to get off the damn bus this weekend in their respective matchups. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. If you're a gambler, the NFL every week just seems really tight, really tightly handicapped, really very strange. I don't want to use the R word or the F word. It just seems like, the NFL is just so close in parity and competition that those lines are just too good.
Yeah, wisely handicapped by the experts.
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, we thank you for listening. If you're listening on SoundCloud, iTunes, or just the website in general, check us out on all our social media platforms. We've got Facebook.com/Vegas Squares. Our Twitter handle is Vegas Squares. Our Instagram is Vegas Squares Podcast. And you can search for us on iTunes and SoundCloud. Just search Vegas Squares Podcast. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about the NFL. We started with the Thursday night game, which was the date of our last podcast. I believe we both had Arizona in that one.
We did.
Depending on where you got the line, you either covered or won. I think it closed at 6. So I when we gave out the pick, it was 6.5. Took the podcast, you listened to it, you made the pick immediately, you would have won. I, however, was not as fortunate. I jumped on the Cardinals at 6, ended up with a push, which doesn't feel great, but it doesn't feel bad.
Yeah, that's much better than a loss at any time.
Yeah, I mean, the Drew Stanton machine gave it its all, but it just wasn't enough for the Seahawks. A big story in that is, though, that Richard Sherman will be out for the year.
Impacting the Seahawks the rest of the season as well as potentially in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it looks like they're thinking about signing, or actually did sign Byron Maxwell to a contract. Obviously, when they made the trade for Dwayne Brown, they traded Jeremy Lane. When you look at the Seahawks secondary, obviously, what was that Super Bowl 3-4 years ago against Denver when they just absolutely demolished the Broncos?
Yeah.
Is the Legion of Boom strike the same fear in teams as it used to 3, 4, 5 years ago?
I don't see that as much anymore. I see their fan base is still very strong, but as a team, I don't see them striking as much fear. I see them winning a lot of closer games compared to blowing out teams like they have in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I think teams are going to have a little bit easier time to pass on the outside corners because, I mean, Richard Sherman was, for all intents and purposes, one of those shutdown corners in the league where you may throw his way 2-3 times a game, but other than that, you're not truly looking in his direction during your game plan. I mean, they still have Cam Chancellor, they still have Earl Thomas, and now they've got Byron Maxwell in the fold. Rookie Shaquille Griffin out of UCF has been playing very well. But you're right, I don't know if it has the same factor on the outside. In the middle, they're still dangerous. Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas are just 1 and 1A in terms of safeties in the league.
Very true.
In the Cardinals' running game, I guess they're going to have to rely on it for the rest of the year with Stanton being in there. But Peterson, 30 yards on 21 carries is just not, I don't think, what they expected. But no. Fitzgerald had a nice game.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, Peterson's going to have to. He's had 4 games in Arizona now, and he's had two great, 2 bad.
Yeah, about 50-50 ratio.
Yeah. So if you depending on when you got that number, you either won or pushed. I was on the unfortunate side of pushing in that, but I will still take the great situation where the sportsbook does not take my money. The Thursday night game was a little bit of a dud, but hey, we move on to the Sunday games.
Yeah, well, it wasn't too surprising that Arizona's defensive line got to Russell Wilson pretty quick, applied some pressure, minimizing the damage on their defense.
Yeah, they have offensive line problems. That's been well documented for the last couple of years. Let's move on to the Sunday games. The first game that I see on the docket was a rout. And I had interest in this for gambling purposes and for fantasy purposes, both the fact that I had Drew Brees, who really didn't do much. He had a rushing touchdown, but really didn't have a Drew Brees kind of game. And I played against Mark Ingram, who had the game of the millennium with 130 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, very strong performance by the New Orleans rushing. You got 6 rushing touchdowns together as a team.
It doesn't happen a lot. I mean,
no, that's a franchise record for them.
Yeah, in today's aerial attack, I mean, 6 rushing touchdowns. I can't remember the last time I've seen any kind of dominance like that. But 47-10. The spread was 2.5 to 3, depending on where you got it. I laid the Bills. Well, that was clearly I was already done with that by halftime.
Yeah. Two rushers from New Orleans put on a strong performance. Ingram, like you said, 3 touchdowns, over 130 yards. And like one of your ones to watch, Kamara, touchdown, 106 yards. Very strong performance by New Orleans all around, defensively as well as offensively, working together as a team to watch out of the NFC this year.
Yeah. So that brings an interesting point. I mean, Mark Ingram, he signed a contract a couple years ago, but he's going to be coming up, due for another one. Do they go with a 2-back situation and keep Mark Ingram? I mean, it seems to be working. Kamara is great out of the backfield, both running and receiving. I don't know if he's necessarily got the legs to be the horse, and I don't know if the Saints really want a horse, because they brought in Peterson to
give them some extra depth.
Give them some depth on first and second down. It didn't work. Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at the Sean Payton era. You got the Reggie Bushes, you got the Pierre Thomases, you got the Mark Ingram out of the backfield, you got Kamara out of. I mean, he's got that running back who can he take 15, 20 carries, but also can have 8 to 9, 10 receptions out of the backfield.
He kind of reminds me of like a Theodore Riddick kind of.
Right. Michael Thomas finally got on the board, too. He had 117 yards of Drew Brees' 184.
Yeah.
It was just a drubbing by the Saints all around. They got it. For the fact that they had 6 rushing touchdowns and had that much yardage on the ground, to still put up 47 points is just this. The Saints are 7-2. They've won 7 in a row after starting 0-2. They're leading the division, and they've been playing great lately. The Bills, at once we thought they were going to tank the season, then they started out hot. Now they're just kind of middle grounding it. They're looking for I don't know what they're looking for the rest of the season.
Either make or break situation for them soon.
Yeah, but I mean, what do you do at this point? Do you just ship the season and try to go 5-11 and maybe get like a 9th pick? It's just kind of a weird situation. I mean,
yeah, they're kind of like in a catch-22. Either risk it for the biscuit or start taking and get a better draft pick, maybe a top 5 pick if you're lucky.
Yeah, I mean, in the AFC, they're not really out of it. I mean, as far as the wild card goes, so I think the next 2 games will be telling for them as far as what they want to do with their season. Packers with an upset over the Bears. I think you and I both had the Bears on that.
We did.
And we both said with a caveat, I don't know how a team this bad can lay 4.5 to 5 points, and we still took them.
Yes.
And we still took them.
The Bears.
Yeah, I mean, there were some interesting calls. The John Fox challenge was kind of weird, in my opinion. It kind of almost, he challenged one, and it still kind of hurt his team.
Yeah.
It was a weird situation, but Brett Hundley finally gets his first win. The Packers get their first win since Aaron Rodgers goes down with his season-ending injury. The Packers are 5-4. I would say they controlled this game. I mean, they didn't rush very well, in my opinion, but they kind of contained the rushing attack of the Bears, which is their strength. Cohen had nothing.
No.
Jordan Howard had 50 and change yards.
Yeah.
Brett Hundley didn't turn the ball over in the air. He had no interceptions, 212 and a touchdown. It's not going to win most weeks, but against a bad Bears team, it's going to get it done.
Oh, absolutely. I see what's controlling this destiny for Green Bay is their defense, whether they can keep them in the games long enough and control how their season ends up.
Kind of an interesting player for fantasy purposes. I picked him up. I didn't start him this week. Dontrell Inman for the Bears had 6 receptions, 88 yards. Looked like the clear-cut number 1 receiver based on the fact that Cam Meredith's out, Kevin White's out. Their receiving core is just in the tank. He's an interesting prospect going forward. I'm going to probably start him next week because I don't really have a lot of depth in my receiving options. Kelvin Benjamin was pretty terrible this week, and I don't know if the change of scenery for Benjamin's going to be any good for him as far as stats numbers. So I think Inman going forward has an uptick in fantasy production with Mitchell Trubisky Mitchell Trubisky had almost 300 yards passing, this week. So I think that those two going hand in hand, I think, what do you think about Inman going forward? We talked about him a little bit in the breakout players.
We did. I think he has a lot of potential. He's going to be a big target for Trubisky. I see him maybe having a good week next week playing the Lions. A little beat up on defense right now, so.
Yeah, and speaking of the Lions, well, they did their best to try to give that game to Cleveland. I mean, Cleveland.
They tried a few times.
It was almost like hot potato. I don't want the win. You want the win. You take the win. No, I don't want it. You take it. No, you take the win. I don't want it.
Very true.
After 3 quarters, they were tied. I mean, how are you tied with Cleveland if you're trying to be, you're trying to chase the Vikings? You can't have these kind of games with. No. I mean, and you're I'm sure you watched the game. You're the Lions fan. What was going on in that game? I mean, Stafford had a good game, 250 and 3 TDs.
Yeah.
But it just didn't seem like a team that wanted to make the playoffs.
Lions right now are beat up altogether. Offensive line had about 2 players did not start, as well as 1 out for the game. Defensively, the same situation. What really helped us, though, was special teams. Defensive touchdown, that was a fumble, recovered 44-yard touchdown, I believe it was.
Yeah, and they're not very good at home. I'm looking at their splits. They're not a very good home team, so the Brownies, they still ended up covering, which is the crazy thing. I mean, they had the 12 to 13 point spread depending on where you caught it.
I was surprised how this game started that they still ended up covering. Yeah,
it was just a very strange. They didn't look very good overall, even though their numbers. I mean, Golden Tate had 100 and a touchdown. I have Isaiah Crowell on my fantasy team. Finally jumped out to having a good game. I just happened to play him this week because I had some serious bye week and injury situations. I had no Kareem Hunt this week, and I had no Jay Ajayi this week. So I had to go with the Isaiah Crowell Express, which actually turned out to work. So back to the bench. Touchdown. Yeah, back to the bench he goes next week. But thank you, Isaiah. Tip of the cap to you for my bye week replacement. The Browns are an interesting situation. They're now the only winless team in football, and we'll talk about the 49ers a little bit later.
Yeah.
Is Hugh Jackson, is this one-year experiment just going to be over? I mean, Cleveland, I don't know if he's a bad coach. It's just it's weird. Their defense is like top 10.
It is. I would say it's definitely something to look out for in the future. Once they,
But I mean, every single coach has seemed to stick around for 1 or 2 years. Yeah. They're the Browns. They're not going to turn it around in a calendar year. So you can't keep. You got to give a guy a shot.
You got to give it about 2 or 3 years at least, or something. Otherwise, you're still going to go through the same situation, kind of how Detroit did in the mid 2000s.
Yeah, I think at this point, sometime if they get the number 1 pick, they keep passing on Wentz. They keep doing all this bullshit.
Well, in my opinion, wouldn't really help the Browns as right now for this year.
No, of course not. I mean, at 9 losses, you can't make the playoffs. It's statistically.
I could see flipping a few losses to a W, but not many. Maybe they'd be 2-7 instead of 0-9.
I'm just saying, if you're 7-9, if you win the next 7 games, you're not making the playoffs, and you just wasted your draft. You just wasted your draft stock.
No, I see them maybe trying to get a W instead of going 0-16, but I see them going about 1-15. For the season.
Yeah, I mean, that's if they win a game. I know William Hill's probably going to start putting out the Browns. Will the Browns win a game? I bet it last year.
Yeah.
And I obviously lost because they did win 1 game, but I'm sure that prop bet will come out here real soon. I think going back to what I was talking about Hugh Jackson. I think at this point, your organization has botched the last 20 years of existence since they've come back. I think you just put all your chips in on whoever you believe is the best pick. You're going to get the number 1 pick, more than likely, unless all of a sudden you start doing something weird and winning.
Which the Browns, I'm sure they could mess that up for sure. Mess up getting that number 1 pick.
Yeah, so I think, in my mind right now, the best quarterback for my money is Sam Darnold. I think you just tank the season and you take him. I mean, they've passed on Carson Wentz.
Take him, maybe get a few offensive linemen late in the last couple rounds and just try and build a little team going.
But it's not even that. It's just at this point in time, you need a signal caller. Deshaun Kaiser is not it.
No.
He had a good preseason, and that's why all the hype was there. Whatever the rest of that stable is, Kessler and Hogan, and it's just not it. Just if you're Hugh Jackson and you're going to go down with the ship, put all your chips on Sam Darnold.
Be interesting to watch for sure if they do go with that.
So let's move on. Bengals and Titans. That was a really interesting game. I happened to catch that just because I had some action on the game late with a friend. I got the Bengals +4 in game, which actually ended up being a push. And then I was excited when they took the lead. A.J. Green with that bomb down the middle. Thank you, A.J., because I needed that because you were looking like hot dog shit for 3 quarters of the game.
Yeah.
The Titans end up sneaking a win. DeMarco Murray has another huge game, 3 touchdowns. That's an interesting scenario with me is the Titans. I mean, they are, at this point, leading the AFC South.
Yes.
Tied with Jacksonville, but they are leading based on the fact that they beat Jacksonville.
I think they will end up winning that division. I don't see Jacksonville keeping up with them, even against Lake opponents or against them one more time.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't think Jacksonville has a shot at 6-3 as we stand here in Week 10? They're both 6-3.
I could see them sneaking into a wild card, but to win the division, I think Tennessee is stronger altogether overall as a team.
I smell a bet. I think. All right, let's look at this. You take Tennessee. I'll take Jacksonville.
Okay.
We'll figure out a punishment or a payout.
Okay.
Anything comes to you, we'll talk about it. I think Jacksonville's going to win this division, and I think they're going to win it at 10-6.
10-6?
Yeah, I think 10-6 is going to win this division, Jacksonville. So we can talk about that. The Bengals and the Titans. DeMarco Murray had another great game. He's had the most carries over the last 4 years of any back in the NFL. It's documented, well documented.
Mm-hmm.
But Derrick Henry doesn't seem to be really impeding into his touches.
No, it doesn't seem like that either.
I mean, does it seem like DeMarco, you like the Titans to win the division. It seemed like DeMarco can carry this team, or do they need both of them down the stretch?
I think they need both of them down the stretch. I believe for Mariota performing as well he's doing, they need a dual weapon out of the back instead of a single back. Yeah, I mean, they're kind of, I wouldn't say they're almost a thunder and lightning because DeMarco Murray is not really a lightning back. DeMarco Murray is a between the tackles, run the ball down the lane. And Derrick Henry is a between the guards, smash mouth football kind of guy. So they don't really have like that scat back Shane Vereen, Tiki Barber, Reggie Bush kind of guy. So they're a two-headed monster of power football. Yeah. I mean, DeMarco can catch out of the backfield, but they just seem more of a power duo to me than a thunder and lightning kind of thing. No, I tend to agree with that. So we got Steelers and we got Colts. This was an interesting situation this Sunday because I grabbed the Colts money line and the points this weekend. I almost had the money line. And I'm not mad at the Colts for blowing it because they're not a good team. Very true. But I'm mad at the Colts for a little bit for blowing it because they should have beaten the Steelers. I mean, the Steelers are 7-2 with all due respect, but they played a terrible game. Steelers has been one of those teams that have been, even though there's a 7-2 team, there's probably a 7-2 team. I don't know if I agree with that. I think they're one of the better teams in the league. Their defense is what makes them a little bit of a suspect team. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, Indianapolis showed, you can shut down Antonio Brown, which is very hard to do. But Juju is emerging. Yep. He's definitely one to look out for. Just under 100 yards, a touchdown, 7 targets, 5 receptions. A good co-wide receiver to Antonio Brown. Absolutely. You need a guy like that, and I thought Martavis Bryant was that guy. And for some, he's a great third receiver, Martavis Bryant, but you need, when you have a guy who's getting all the focus like Antonio, A.J. Green, Odell Beckham, you need a second guy. Yeah. I think Juju's developing into that second guy. He looks really good as long as Big Ben can find him. Yeah. The situation I look at here with the Colts, obviously they're not a very good team. I don't know what they're intending to do. Chuck Pagano, I would say, is as good as gone next year, but I could be wrong. I said he was as good as gone last year. Yeah. I don't know what they're intending to do. They're 3-7. At this point in time, they should just be trying for 3-13. Yeah. But Jacoby Brissett is also trying to audition for another team. Very true. So, I understand the players are going to play. Players are going to play, shooters going to shoot. I get it. But, the management staff should be effectively trying to lose games. Indianapolis played well. But my question is I was looking at this. In the beginning of the year, I drafted Marlon Mack in my fantasy league. When is this Frank Gore experiment going to be done? I see it maybe lasting another year or two at most. I don't see it lasting much longer. A year or two? That guy's done. He's not the Frank Gore of before. When are they just going to get? They cut ties with the Andre Johnson experiment real quick. I don't know. It's just Frank Gore. I watch him run. He's just slow, and he's just not finding holes. He's more like a fullback instead. Yeah,
I've had him all year because I'm waiting for him to break out, and I think it's just time to maybe dump him. But I knew as soon as I dump him, they're going to dump Frank Gore. Yeah, they're going to dump Frank Gore. All right. So we got the Vikings and we have the Redskins.
That was a very interesting game.
That was a fun game, but it was a fun game in the sense of the Redskins were never really in it.
No, yeah.
I took the Redskins money line this week. Obviously, that was a loss, but I mean, you have the only game of the week where both teams scored points in every quarter.
Yeah, that was.
That to me is crazy. I mean, that doesn't happen a lot in the NFL. Usually, the second and third, a little bit of a lull, but both teams came out firing on all cylinders the entire game, and Washington didn't play bad. Their defense needs some tune-up.
Yeah, and I can kind of sense that with the Vikings as well with their defense. They were supposed to have a strong power defense. They looked a little weak this week against Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I think they sat back on their heels. I mean, the situation going into it is Washington has no run game.
Yeah.
And the Vikings knew that, and they still gave up 30 points and gave Kirk Cousins 327 yards.
Yeah.
But a testament to that is that they got up by almost 3 scores midway through the second or third quarter, one of the two.
Yeah.
And they were I don't want to say they were coasting because you never want an NFL team to coast.
They were laying back down a little.
Yeah, they were. They were sat back on there, but they've won 5 in a row, and that's all that matters. And Case Keenum is rolling. The other story with Case Keenum is the fact that Teddy Bridgewater is back. Teddy Bridgewater was a first-round pick. Teddy Bridgewater has a lot of expectations. Teddy Bridgewater also played well before he got hurt. What happens now?
A report that I heard earlier today, the coach knows who he's going to start next week, but hasn't announced it yet officially. Whether that looks more towards Bridgewater starting or maybe keep Keenum in. I think it's more looking towards Bridgewater's going to start if he knows who he's starting but hasn't announced it yet. So
I think that Keenum's got to stay in as long as he's hot.
If I were the coach, I would do that, but who knows with the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, they're 7-2 at this point. They're leading the NFC North. I think they have a 2-week grace period in the sense of they can let Keenum kind of be Keenum. And, if he happens to have one bad game, you give him another one. If they lose 2 in a row and they become 7-4 and, in a dogfight with Detroit, then okay, you can look at Bridgewater. But it's all about chemistry. Now your teams, really barring injuries, your playoff team should be set, your rosters.
Yeah.
If Keenum's your guy that's got you to pretty much 7-2, I mean, I think Bradford won one game, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
So if Keenum's the guy that's got you to this record for all intents and purposes,
I would keep Keenum in there.
You got to roll with Keenum until he just looks like he cannot provide, the leadership and the stats going forward. I want to take a look at Vikings schedule because that's going to be the key indicator. So coming up, they've got the Rams and they've got the Lions the next 2 weeks. The Lions at home. The Lions on the road, the Rams at home. Rams are hot. That'll be an interesting game. I think Keenum's got to start that game.
Yeah.
And then if he doesn't play well, I think at the Lions and at the Falcons the next 2 weeks. Because if they don't beat the Rams, they're 7-3, and then they go through Lions, Falcons, and Panthers all on the road.
That's a very tough schedule.
It's a tough schedule. It's the good thing for them is it's 2 domes out of 3.
Yeah, and,
so it's kind of like home field turf. So it's good for them to
just minus the crowd, yeah.
Right, it's a different crowd, but it's the turf, like the surface. I mean, a lot of people's surfaces are different. So
that plays a lot into how a team plays.
Yeah, I think if they go 1-2 in that stretch, I think you see Bridgewater. But other than that, I think you got to roll with Keenum. He got 11 touchdowns. His QBR hasn't been great, but he's been good enough to get them wins, and that's really what matters in this league.
Keep them ahead, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that's where you've got to look at the situation where I think the Vikings got to stay with Keenum. So, the toilet bowl. Jets and Bucks. God, that was an awful game. It rained through the first half. I watched this game because I grew up in Florida and I secretly root for the Bucks, but I was secretly rooting for anything exciting to happen, and I did not get my wish.
It's a very boring game. No scores at all, really. It's pretty much a whole bunch of field goals.
Yeah, there were 2 scores at the end in the fourth quarter, but yeah, you're right. The rest of the time, I mean, the Jets, while they were tied at halftime and only down by 6 in the third, never really seemed like they had a shot. I mean, the Bucks had life. Deshaun Jackson had a pretty good game. Doug Martin had an average game. He had some good catches out of the backfield. Charles Sims had a touchdown catch. But, I mean, the 2 quarterbacks were just terrible in this game. I had a bye week I had Alex Smith in one of my leagues, and I had to go with Fitzpatrick, and that was a terrible decision. Because I wanted to get Goff, but I didn't get him on the waiver claim, so I ended up with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and it was terrible.
Yeah, throwing for less than 200 yards. He did have a touchdown, so that worked for you, but he also had an interception. And
yeah, did you see the interception, the back-to-back interceptions in that game? It was another hot potato example. They were like, I don't want the ball. You take the ball. I don't want the ball. Josh McCown leans back, throws a bomb right to Brett Grimes. Brett Grimes returns it to the 20, to the other 20, or the 30, and Ryan Fitzpatrick promptly throws a pick right back to the Jets. It was like literally, and then when he returned it, I think, I could be wrong, but within 1 or 2 yards, it was basically they threw it back to the Jets and they returned it right to the line of scrimmage, same line of scrimmage that they had when they had the ball. It was almost like it was a weird, I don't know.
It was like a Matrix kind of situation.
You just can't make this shit up. It's the craziest stuff. But you're right. I mean, 262 for McCown, 187. Each had a touchdown. Each had those back-to-back picks. No rushing attack for either team in this. Deshaun Jackson had a couple good drives. Robbie Anderson increases his touchdown streak.
The only thing that looked good about this game was Tampa Bay's defense getting to Josh McCown pretty well. Yeah,
they've had some trouble, their line getting sacks this year, but they definitely stepped it up this week, and they snapped a 5-game skid. So I don't know. They're an interesting situation. I don't think they can make the playoffs unless they win the next 7 in a row. So I think it's 2 toilet bowl teams fighting for top 10 draft picks.
I absolutely see that.
Now, going from a game that was a complete dud to a game that was a complete stud, I don't know if you caught this when I was watching it. I love Sunday Ticket, the fact that you can just flip around. When a game sucks, you're not stuck with it. Chargers and Jaguars, they only scored 37 points, but it was action. Yes. The entire game was fantastic with lightning plays, great turnovers, and boneheaded moves. Because, like you said, the Jaguars, I think, are playing above expectation, and they're not used to this realm. So they were making some pretty bonehead plays. Mm-hmm. But this was a hell high intense game.
It was, even though, like you said, slow scoring, it was very well action packed.
I mean, they had a fake punt. He ran it for a 56-yard touchdown.
Yeah. What else do you expect in a football game?
I know. You have overtime. You have picks by Bortles and Rivers, which is classic. Classic Bortles, classic Rivers. You're going to throw turnovers. Not really any offense. I mean, the Jaguars abandoned the run in the second quarter. I mean, Fournette had nothing, if I'm not mistaken. I think he had 45 yards on the ground. No, he had 33 yards on the ground. So they abandoned the run. Yeldon had nothing. Ivory had nothing. Melvin Gordon was non-existent in this game. Austin Eckler, his backup, had 2 receiving touchdowns. I mean, it's just unexpected football that you would see.
Yeah.
It was a weird game, but it was intense. It was action-packed. And, I mean, Jacksonville, the last few weeks between the A.J. Green saga, beating the Steelers and then this overtime, they're a fun team to watch.
They are.
I don't have a lot to say about it. It was one of those games. It was like you can't really remember what happened. You just remember it was exciting.
Yeah, full of action.
Because the stats sheet does not show that same level of excitement. Interesting afternoon in Jacksonville.
And that includes that fake punt that went for the 56 yards.
Yeah, I mean, 56 of their rushing yards were on one fake punt.
Yeah. Not every day you see that, so.
No. So let me ask you this. With Blake Bortles.
Yes.
If he makes a playoff appearance, whether it's the division or the wild card, he's in the final year of his deal. Do they re-sign him? I mean, is he maturing and progressing enough at this point? I mean, if he wins a division title?
I think that's enough to keep him around if he wins the division. Wild card, I think it's up in there. You might do a shorter-term deal. And
Like a 2-3 year deal.
Yeah.
At most with.
If he wins the division, I could see them signing him for about 3 to 5 years.
Okay, so if he does end up, his time being over in Jacksonville, I mean, he's a former top 5 pick. I think he's number 3 overall a couple years back.
Sounds about right, yeah.
Does he stick in the league as a backup, I guess, or does he have a starting job next year?
I think he will have a starting job next year, whether it's with Jacksonville or with some other team. I'm guessing more than likely it'll be probably with Jacksonville again.
So, I mean, I look at Blake Bortles' stats. I mean, over 4 years, the interception numbers are really high.
They are.
But, I mean, his career stats, let me pull them up here in just a second. His career stats, he's got 80 touchdowns and 58 picks. I mean, 80 touchdowns in 4 years is a good average. I mean, you're averaging 20 a year. I mean, that's pretty good, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say that's a little above average, considering you're playing with Jacksonville to begin with, too.
Right. I mean, and in his second year in the league, his completion percentage isn't very high, but his second year in the league, he threw for 35 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy, especially coming from Jacksonville.
That's what I'm saying. The stats are there. It's just a weird, he's a kind of a weird egg.
I would consider him more like an average.
He's not a bust, I don't think, but he's not a boom prospect.
No, he's one that you could keep around, kind of be mid-grade, maybe make a division run or a wild card run. And
is he better than Kaepernick?
I would say he is. Kaepernick, at least he can run the ball, but Bortles isn't too bad on the ground. I mean, in this game, he was the leading rusher except for that fake punt. So
yeah, so he's got some wheels on him. Speaking of guys who Bill O'Brien thinks are better than Kaepernick, the Tom Savage experiment is just not working in Houston. Obviously, Deshaun's out for the year, but the Rams go on and win 33-7 in a game where it just, the Texans had no shot. I mean, they were close at halftime. The third quarter, the Rams just blew it out the water.
Yeah, I wasn't too surprised. That was a massacre in this game.
It was. If you dive deeper into the situation, into the game, I mean, it was big plays for the Rams, which scares me going forward, because if the Rams can't get those big plays, are they really competitive? Because, I mean, the last 2 weeks, they crushed the Giants, off of big plays, that third down play where they threw a screen pass and went for a 50-yard touchdown. This week, Robert Woods has a 95-yard touchdown.
Yeah,
I mean, they're the king of the big plays. Gurley hasn't been running well the last few weeks.
No, I mean, this game he only had 68 yards on 11 carries. Not a horrible average, but no breakout players. One long run of 34.
I mean,
not very impressive.
Robert Woods' 94-yard touchdown. All their action came in the third quarter. But other than that, I mean, they looked. I mean, without the third quarter, they scored 12 points.
And that's not going to win any games.
That's not going to beat, good teams. The Houston Texans' defense is just in shambles. There's no JJ, no Cushing. They've just not looked very good they've not looked as good as they've been advertised. Which is, I understand, the injuries hurt. But without that third quarter, it's a 12-7 ball game. So to me, it just didn't seem like the Rams. It seems like the Rams' wins are smoke and mirrors. They have a lot of points, but there are a lot of big plays that aren't going to fly against good defenses. I mean, look at their 2 losses. They've lost to Seattle, who has a good defense, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they lost to the Redskins, I think.
I actually think that is right. I think I actually
they lost to the Redskins
that day.
So teams that have good offenses and defenses that aren't complete matador are going to be able to beat them. They look at ahead in their schedule. They play New Orleans, good defense. Minnesota, good defense. Arizona, average defense. Philadelphia, good defense. Seattle again. Tennessee with a good defense. They got a hard schedule coming up ahead. I mean, Goff's playing really well right now. That's going to be his test.
Whether he can maybe shorten some throws and let the players do runs, or whether he has to find deep bombs down the field.
Well, he's got to get Gurley back. That's first. I mean, not that he's gone, but I'm saying he's got to get Gurley back to running the way he was running in the beginning of the year. So,
open up that pass game and let the flow of the offense trickle.
Right. So we have the Cowboys and the Falcons, which was the first game of Ezekiel Elliott's suspension. And they got crushed.
Yeah.
They were never in this game. I mean, their leading rusher with 53 yards on 11 carries was Alfred Morris, who
Yep.
didn't really show me anything.
Prescott had 40 off of 6.
Yeah. But Prescott, 176, no touches, no touchdowns, no interceptions, is not going to get it done. He needs a legit rushing attack to open up his game, which is the play-action pass.
A lot had to do with it was Falcons' defense. Claiborne was a big part of this game.
Yeah.
A lot of
made himself some money, too.
Yeah.
If I read that correctly. He made himself $650,000 from a performance bonus.
Yeah, it was something to look forward for Atlanta's defense to come, whether he can keep that up or.
Well, yeah, he didn't really work out in Tampa Bay, but if he can, you're right. If he can have, he's not going to have 6 sacks every game, but if he can create pressure. Yeah, their defense is good last year. Their defense just needs to step it up a little bit. I mean, the offense didn't look great. Matt Ryan, 215, 2 touchdowns is not, light up the scoreboard. Matt Ryan, Matty Ice MVP numbers. Tevin Coleman had a nice game, 83 and a touchdown, sat on my bench.
Oh.
What's the situation with Julio? I mean, I know he has, but why are you not getting that guy, 15 targets a game?
Yeah, and
I mean, I know they have a lot of weapons, and I don't think the defenses. I watch the defenses; they don't really. I don't know if you're getting him 6 catches. This guy should have 10, 11 catches every game, in my opinion.
Yeah, he should have like 12 to 15 targets. About
he should be getting
to 12 catches a game.
He should be getting Antonio Brown type targets.
Yeah,
because he's 6'5".
Yeah,
a massive specimen. He can beat a lot of players on 50-50 balls. I don't know. Just to me, it just seems like when they can't move the ball, you go to the guy that can get you yards.
Do you think maybe something's not 100% with him, like if he's got like a little injury or something? Or
I mean, he is definitely injury prone. It just seems this year he seems like he's okay this year. I don't know. I mean,
he's not the breakout player that we know him for.
I mean, he's having good. I mean, 6 catches, is a good game. I mean, they weren't for. Yeah. It's only for 57 yards, but he's not a guy who screams 9 yards a catch to me. He's a guy who screams 17 to 25 yards a catch.
Yeah, more like how Gabriel performed for Atlanta.
Exactly. Well, Gabriel's a speedster. He turns screens. He's the screen guy.
Yeah, he's kind of like a Golden Tate type of player.
Yeah. So I mean, the Cowboys going forward are going to have an interesting situation.
Yeah.
They've got a tough schedule coming up. In my opinion, the NFC East, they got to face the Eagles again.
That's going to be definitely a tough challenge.
Yeah, that's next week. Then they get a couple of games that they can win in Los Angeles and Washington and New York. Then they got to go out to Oakland, play Seattle, and then play Philadelphia to end the season. So it's starting to look more like 8-8, 9-7, 7-9. That area, 500 ball is best case scenario for them. So
yeah, I'm going more towards 8-8 with them. Maybe 9-7 if they can step it up somehow and get a loss into a W somehow. But
yeah, then you have the 49ers who get off the schneid, 1-9, beat the Giants, who are an absolute dumpster fire.
Yeah, and if you're the Giants, you want to go 1-15 right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You definitely do. At this point in time, I think that's exactly what they're doing, because I think the Giants were more talented than the 49ers. On paper, but I don't think they tried to win this game.
No,
I mean, C.J. Beathard had a good game, almost 302 touchdowns.
Yeah. I mean, even though Eli Manning's stats weren't too bad, he had just shy of 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not a horrible game for him, but it's just...
Who, Eli?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he didn't have a bad game. I mean, Sterling Shepard, a guy we talked about breaking out, had a good game, 11 interceptions, 140. That's the kind of numbers Julio should be having.
Yeah.
11 catches, 142 yards. That's the kind of game.
Double-digit average, yeah.
Yeah, but it's just, Eli's not playing bad. I mean, they're not going to bench him. Why would you bench him at this point? I mean, unless he actually has a chance to beat a team. He's not good enough to beat teams at this point. So let him play, keep his streak alive, maybe get rid of him next year, see what you can flip for him, because I'm sure he can find a spot in a God forbid, a place like Cleveland.
Yeah.
I mean, he can find a place to play next year.
Yeah.
But you've got to work on your team, and if McAdoo's gone, then McAdoo's gone. But the fact of the matter is they still need to get the best possible pick that they can. Beathard played well. Carlos Hyde didn't play quite that well. He had 100 yards, but it just didn't seem like he was moving very fast. I don't know if he's hurt. He might be hurt.
It's something towards that. I mean, he had a lot of carries, which doesn't seem to me like he's hurt enough to make too much of impact. But he kind of seems sluggish on the field.
Yeah. Well, given the fact that it's the Giants and the 49ers, I don't think there's really too much to take away from this. I mean,
no, San Francisco had the lead the whole game, and New York got pretty much a late touchdown to get somewhat closer.
Yeah, there was no fight in this game. I'm not sure how many people watched that game, but I'm sure a lot of eyes were on the Sunday night game. Pats Broncos.
Definitely.
This, I believe you and I both took the points with the Broncos on this one.
Yeah, based on the history with the Broncos, Patriots, and Denver with Osweiler.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to make a declaration now. The no-fly zone, the ban has been lifted.
Yeah.
Because teams are flying all over that secondary.
Yeah, it's like a landing strip down there, almost.
I mean, Brady, 266, 3 touchdowns. Dion Lewis had a good game. He had a kickoff return touchdown of 100 yards.
Yeah.
And 55 and a touchdown. I know it's hard, obviously, fantasy-wise, to pick a running back, but I think he's the running back going forward.
Yeah.
That if you're going to pick up anybody for your team, he's the running back that you need.
Absolutely. I don't think Burkhead's the choice for New England.
Yeah, Burkhead's a nice change of pace guy. I mean, he did have a touchdown in the reception game, but I mean, Gillislee has shown to have fumbling problems. He's hurt, and if you fumble, you're going to be in the doghouse with Bill Belichick.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And James White's a great receiving option too. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, let me check this out real quick, but I believe running backs had all of the touchdowns in this game. Could I be wrong? No, Dwayne Allen had a touchdown. He had 1 catch for 11 yards and a touchdown. But Burkhead had a touchdown, James White had a touchdown, and Dion Lewis had 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with you have Gronk, you have Cooks, you now have Martellus Bennett, Amendola, Hogan will be back. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, look like Gronk, Cooks, Bennett, Amendola. I mean, Philip Dorsett, for lack of a better, for situation. You have James White, you have Dion Lewis, you have Rex Burkhead, you have Michael. That's 10 weapons. I don't have any more fingers on these hands. That's 10 weapons in the offense. I dare you to name another team that has 10 legitimate weapons running and receiving the football.
I think maybe a team might have 8 if you're lucky, and that's about it.
I can't even think of 8. I mean, I can't even think of a team. I mean, okay, look at Atlanta. Devontae, Julio, Coleman, Gabriel, and Sanu. Okay, that's 5. Yeah. I mean, who else is in this? I mean, look at Philadelphia. You got Alshon. You got J.J. Blunt. They're doing it. Yeah, it's just it's crazy. I mean, the 10 weapons in that. I mean, Brian Hoyer got in the game last night.
Yeah,
Brian Hoyer got in the game.
It's pretty bad when you have to let that guy in.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, that's the Week 10 recap. We also have the Monday Night Football game, but it was an interesting Sunday. I mean, there was a lot of it's the NFL. There's a lot of unexpected outcomes.
Yeah.
Especially when you're gambling.
Week by week, almost 90 team can win.
I mean, you and I both had the Falcons, which came through. That was nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
We both. Who else did we both have?
Cardinals.
Yeah, Cardinals was good.
The Bears. That was a disappointment.
Yeah. So I mean, I went. I bet a lot of the games. I went 5-3 in mine. I'm thinking about a play on tonight's game, but I haven't decided yet. We do have a poll up on Twitter right now. If you check us out on Twitter at Vegas Squares, let me check the Twitter. I mean, exactly what I wrote. Oh, the best bet for tonight. I think I put 4 options. You have the Panthers in the over, Panthers in the under, Dolphins in the over, Dolphins in the under. So if we get this up in time, or if you happen to catch that on Twitter, go ahead and vote. I'd like to know the best bet of Monday night, what your thoughts are. Speaking of Dolphins and Panthers, what are your thoughts on this game? Because it's an interesting one.
It is. I want to count the Dolphins out of this one, but I see Carolina winning outright. I'm not sure if they'll cover. In my mind, it's going to be low scoring. Panthers will win, but will not cover. I have the Dolphins in the under.
So you like the Dolphins with it's now down to 8.5 on ESPN.
Yes.
And you like the under 38.5.
I do. I thinking more like a 17-14 kind of game.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, Carolina's got a good defense. Both teams are pretty solid.
Yeah,
And I don't think any team's offense is blowing the doors off the roof.
No.
I mean, Carolina's 5-4 against the spread. Dolphins are 3-2 against the spread. 4-4 straight up. 6-3 straight up for the Panthers. Nothing really jumps off the page. I think in a situation like this, I think I'm going to lean the Dolphins as well with 8.5 points. You're right. I think they lose by a field goal to a touchdown, 3 to 7 points. I don't like the total at all because I don't know. I can just see 23-20. I can see 2017 in my mind. I can see those situations.
Yeah.
I don't know what side to take on the total, so I'm just gonna lay the 8. I'm gonna take the 8.5. And just
avoid the total.
Yeah, not touch the points. Because I hate having to rely on two teams to do something, whether it be score or not score.
Yeah, it's a lot to do, especially even if you have a parlay. It's good value. It's just relying on too much to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the weather there's supposed to be fine. It's going to be in the 60s. It's just...
Yeah, perfect game for Monday Night Football this time of year.
Yeah, I mean... I'm gonna take the 8. I'm gonna give me the 8.5 points, and that's all.
Will you touch?
Yeah, that's all I really want. Well, you got. Let's look at the standings after Week 10. You have New England, Pittsburgh, Tennessee, and Kansas City leading their respective divisions. Kansas City was on a bye this week, so they didn't play. Oakland, I believe, was on a bye as well, so they didn't play.
Yes.
So, but you have Oakland playing New England in Mexico City next week. What are your thoughts on that game?
It's going to be a make-or-break time for Oakland. Either they're going to have to win this or pretty much their season's in shambles. And
can they beat New England, even though it's on a neutral site?
I know in Mexico City there's a lot of Raiders fans down there, but Patriots just have too many weapons on offense. Their defense is starting to click a little better than how it was in the beginning of the season. I don't see it happening.
So let's look at the standings in the AFC. Like I said, we've got New England, Pittsburgh, Tennessee, and Kansas City. If you had to choose one, and you can reach for the low-hanging fruit. If you had to choose one, which team is not going to be in first place come Week 17?
I could see Tennessee being one of those two teams. I don't see any of the other divisions changing with their leaders. Maybe the North with the Steelers, they're kind of looking like a shaky team, even though they're 7-2. They got a strong lead over the Ravens right now.
Yeah, the Baltimore does. I mean, Flacco's been terrible. I mean, they are 2-1 in the division, which is the easiest way to get back into it. Their one loss is against Pittsburgh, but I don't. Yeah, Tennessee's the low-hanging fruit. I don't see anybody else really challenging their respective division leaders in the AFC. The NFC, you got Philadelphia, Minnesota, New Orleans, and Los Angeles. If you had to look at those four teams, which team do you see not in first place come playoff time?
If I had to pick one, I would choose the Rams. I could see Seattle moving up on them. Even though with Seattle's shaky secondary right now with Sherman out and all that. As well as maybe Minnesota. I'm not sure if they could hold a 2-game lead over Detroit.
See, the one I look at the most that I think could not be there as much as we just hyped them up and they just destroyed Buffalo 47-10, I think New Orleans. New Orleans has got a tough schedule coming up, and it'd be interesting to see if they can actually sustain that. They've got Washington, Los Angeles. They got to play Carolina again. They got to play Atlanta twice. I mean, those 5 games are going to be interesting. I mean, Atlanta twice. Atlanta knows what they need to do to get back in it. Carolina, obviously, is a division, former division champ, knows what it takes to get to the top. Los Angeles will be tough. Washington, that'll be an interesting game. Then they have the Jets in Tampa. I mean, I'd like to think that those are wins for them. So you get them to 9-2. I think 11 wins will win this division. So if they can beat Atlanta once and then beat Washington, I think they'll get in. But I mean, if they don't beat Washington next week, they got a pretty tough 3-game stretch at Atlanta, at Los Angeles, and home against Carolina. So I don't know. I think that's the situation I see most, susceptible to losing their spot on the top of the standings is the Saints.
That's kind of why I like Minnesota not to hold their lead, even though Detroit, is Detroit. Detroit's got an easy schedule on the way out. They have the Bears next week, and then they've got the Vikings on Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, they got the Vikings, and they go to the Ravens, who aren't playing well. The Bucs aren't playing well.
The Bears again, the Bengals, and then the Packers will foul Rodgers, more than likely. So.
Yeah, I mean, they would have to rely on Minnesota faltering, but you're right. They do have an easy schedule going forward, so that could benefit Detroit. Did you bet them to win the division this year?
No, last year I did, and it was pretty abysmal at then.
Well, they lost, 3 or 4 in a row to give the division back?
They lost the last 3, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Detroit's going to Detroit.
Yep, this year wasn't as good as a value, and I just didn't touch it. So, no, Vikings have a tough next 4 games coming up. You have the Rams, like you said, the game against Detroit, in Detroit on Thanksgiving. That's always a tough contest, no matter, even if Detroit's horrible that year. At the Vikings and then at the Panthers. And then the rest of the way out of the schedule is pretty straightforward for them. Bengals, Packers, and Bears. So,
yeah, I mean that's a good setup for Detroit. Well, the NFL, you like to try to predict, you like to try to prepare, but you never can.
No, handicappers are almost too good.
All right, let's move on to the boys who don't get paid officially to play football, and talk about another wild week in the college football scene. There were a lot of, can you always say upsets? You can. I think Auburn. We both had Auburn.
Yeah.
We both took Auburn on the money line. That was a huge beatdown. Georgia, I don't know if they got exposed, but I don't know if they were necessarily a lot of people didn't believe in them. Georgia, even though Mark Richt's gone and Kirby Smart's a new regime, it was still the same Georgia. Once they get to this peak, they just can't hold on to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was kind of surprised that Auburn just went out, did what they had to do, and stirred it up that much almost.
They ran the football, no problem. 170 yards on the ground for Johnson. Stidham had a great game, 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Georgia just never seemed to be in this game, and I don't know. They just got run over. I thought Auburn would win this game, but I thought Auburn would win this game by a field goal, not
field goal, maybe
not 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, it was surprising to see that much of a blowout.
Alabama finally played a contender. Finally played a team with some backbone, and they almost lost that game.
They tried to. I actually liked Alabama to cover this game.
I took Mississippi State in this one. I remember that. I'm trying to remember. We had Auburn. I had Mississippi State.
Yeah.
I'll let you have your time here in just a second. But yeah, Alabama. I talked to a couple people the other day. In my inner circle that we talk betting and we talk sports, and they kept saying Alabama's overrated. Alabama's overrated. Alabama's overrated. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know if Alabama's overrated necessarily. I just think that Alabama's been so dominant for so long. They're naturally given a lot of props. They're overrated in the sense of, are they the best team in the nation? No. They're one of the best. Mm-hmm. But they're not. I'm trying to think of a dominant team. They're not the 2007 Patriots where they're just going to walk in and you just go, all right, we're going to lose by 40.
Yeah.
They're a good team that can be beaten. So I think they're overrated in the sense of, everybody's just ready to crown them the national champions. But I think they're human. I think they've been shown that today Saturday. I think they're human. They got a lot of good talent on defense. They got 2 good running backs, but their quarterback play is just okay.
Yeah, it's nothing outstanding. They're not like the robots like everybody thinks they are.
Yeah. They overrated is a hard term to use. Because when you say overrated, you're saying they're not a good team at all. They're just smoke and mirror.
I think they're a very good team, whether they're a great team and they can win the national championship this year. I think that door is not shut, I think other teams have the door open to upset them in the playoffs.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that they're not hands down runaway. And I have to check Vegas, but I don't think they're the prohibitive favorite at this point.
No, I think that actually goes to Clemson.
No, there's no way Clemson can be the favorite. Clemson is overrated, in my opinion. Clemson is a team that I would say is overrated.
Let me double check as well.
Yeah, Alabama's still the favorite.
Are they?
At minus 140 at this point.
Okay.
So, I mean, the question is when we get to the playoffs, then we'll determine, because they're going to the playoff. I don't see them losing anybody. I mean, they're probably going to play Georgia, because Georgia's still 6-1 in the SEC East. They've locked up the SEC East. They're going to play in Atlanta. So the question is, Auburn's 6-1 in the SEC. If they run the table, Alabama's not even in the SEC title game. They'll be a one-loss team without playing an SEC championship. Can you put Alabama in the playoff?
Depends what happens with the other teams. I won't count them out, but I won't count them in. I
can't do that. I can't put them in a playoff like they did Ohio State. They did that with Ohio State, and Ohio State won the title. So they can look back on precedent and say, look, we did this with Ohio State. Ohio State won the title. I have a hard time putting a team. I personally have a hard time putting a team who can't win their conference in a playoff.
Yeah.
Now, Notre Dame's a different story. Notre Dame's an independent. They don't have a conference. Obviously, we'll talk about them in a second. But Alabama, if they lose to Auburn in the Iron Bowl, Auburn goes to the SEC title game. Auburn plays Georgia. Auburn beats Georgia. Or Georgia beats Auburn. Alabama can't go in that four, right? They can't.
They shouldn't, but...
I mean, Auburn's only losses to LSU. They blew the game on the road. It was a weird game. But Auburn's a pretty good team. I mean, they've lost 2 games. If they win, they're a 2-loss SEC champ.
I think they get in as a 2-loss SEC champ.
You think they get in as a 2-loss SEC champ over... Okay, so you have a 2-loss SEC champ.
Uh-huh.
You have... Miami team who may lose, if they lose in the ACC to Clemson, they'd be a 1-loss team who's not a champ. Clemson would win. Wow, they could really, we talked about this last Thursday, they could really screw things up.
Yeah, whether they get in or not, they're definitely putting some pressure on the teams that want to get in or that are in looking to remain in. So,
well, actually, I was just looking at Miami's schedule. They actually do play Clemson this year, the last week of the season. Oh, it's the never mind. It's the ACC championship has been set because no one can
win the sides.
Yeah, nobody other than Miami and Clemson can win their divisions. So that's been set. So they're going to play each other. So you have a conference championship that includes Miami and Clemson. If the committee loves Clemson so much, now you have a 2-loss Clemson team doesn't get in.
No, definitely not.
But a 1-loss Miami team and a 1-loss Clemson championship team over Alabama?
Maybe. I know as right now the committee didn't do much to look towards Miami, but how they performed against Notre Dame, that might change their minds a little.
It has to. 41-8.
It definitely should, but
I mean, they controlled that game from the whistle to whistle. Notre Dame could do nothing. They had no rushing attack. They had. I mean, their 8 points came off of a pity touchdown. I mean, Miami was up 27-0 at halftime. They just did everything in their power to destroy that team.
Yeah, it's
because they were getting disrespected. And But that's my question. I mean, you look at these teams, and it's just I don't know who to put in. I mean, this is the beauty of it. This is what we wanted with the playoffs. Obviously, this is why we need 8 teams. I think right now the 4 teams that are going to be announced on Tuesday are going to be Alabama, Miami, Oklahoma. I'm not going to put Wisconsin in just yet, even though they should be. I'm going to say they still like Clemson. Clemson didn't do anything this week to hurt themselves. They beat Florida State. They beat them by 17 points.
Wasn't too impressive or anything. It
wasn't impressive, but the committee already likes Clemson.
Yeah.
Clemson lost to Syracuse, and they're still in the top 4 over Wisconsin.
Yeah, I'll give you a rundown of my top 6 that I like for the playoff picture right now. Alabama, Clemson, Miami, Oklahoma, Wisconsin on the outside looking in, and Auburn as a complete shakeup.
I don't know if it's a shakeup. I mean, they should be right on the outside.
Yeah.
Georgia shouldn't be there right now, which they're going to have a chance to get back into it. Ohio State 8-2, they got to be done, even though they can still win the Big Ten. Notre Dame's done. Oklahoma State's done. TCU's done. USC as a Pac-12 champion.
I don't see them getting in.
I don't see them getting in, but I mean, this is the year. If anybody's 9-2, or if anybody's 2-loss team, they're going to get in. They have one more game against UCLA, and then they have the Pac-12 title game, which they're probably going to play either Washington State or Stanford, or Washington. I'm not sure who they're going to play, but all 3 of those teams are ranked at this moment. So they're 11-2 at that point if they win the Pac-12. Even if they don't win the Pac-12, you got a Washington State team who could potentially win the Pac-12, a 2-loss team. They play Washington this week. I mean, they're playing a top 10 team and then playing another top 10 team. You know what I'm saying?
It depends what happens with those games coming forward.
I mean, I don't think Stanford can. If Stanford wins the Pac-12, I don't think they can.
No, they haven't done too much to impress.
They've lost to both USC and Washington State in the conference.
Yeah.
But they play Notre Dame, they play Cal, and then if they have to play USC is, I would say, is pretty much locked up the Pac-12 South. They got to play UCLA, who's not very good. So I think that they would be fine. So they're going to play one of those 3 teams. If they're 11-2, I think they shake up things because I think conference winners matter in the playoffs, in my opinion. I'm not on the committee, but I think conference winners matter. And I think if you have Miami, one of Miami or Clemson's not going to be in. Because I think the loser of that game is going to get knocked out of the playoff committee right at the end.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So you have Oklahoma, who if they run the table, they're in because they don't have a conference championship game.
I see them getting in if they run the table easily.
I mean, they play Kansas, who's nothing, obviously. And then they play West Virginia, who's 7-3, who could give them a fight. But at home, knowing what's on the line, I would not expect Baker Mayfield to lose that game.
No, with how much he has on the line for that.
So trying to, forecast ahead, I think Oklahoma's in. They don't have to play a title game, which actually has hurt them in the past, has hurt the Big 12 in the past, but this year might actually help them. I think Wisconsin is in if they win the Big 10.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Because Wisconsin is going to play Michigan and Minnesota left, plus a Big Ten title game that I would assume includes
Ohio State.
Well, they beat Penn State and they beat Michigan State, so I would assume it's going to include Ohio State unless Ohio State loses their last 2 games against Illinois and Michigan, which is not going to happen. So let's just say Ohio State and Wisconsin are in the Big Ten title game for all intents and purposes. If Wisconsin wins that, they're in. They're 12-0, or they'll be 13-0 at that point. They're in.
I don't see them.
So you have Wisconsin and you have Oklahoma. That's 2. You have the winner of the ACC title game, which is Miami and Clemson. Because Miami's not losing, I believe, their last game against UVA. Oh, they have 2 more games. UVA and Pitt. They got UVA and Pitt. They're not losing those games.
No.
UVA is nothing. UVA is what? 6-4, and Pitt is even worse. They're 4-6.
Yeah.
So the winner of the ACC is in. Miami or Clemson, they're in because the committee loves Clemson, and I think they've got to finally pay attention to Miami at this point. So that's 3. So you have Alabama, Auburn, and Georgia at this point. If Alabama beats Auburn, but loses to Georgia, where do you put Alabama? You can't put Alabama in there. You can't. A one-loss Alabama team is out of the playoff, right? They're out. I've got Oklahoma at 11-1. I've got Wisconsin at 13-0 at that point. I've got the winner of the ACC title game, and I got the winner of the SEC title game. They're out.
I don't know if the committee will do that, though.
But why? I mean, they're supposed to be objective. They can't win their own conference.
They should.
They have a loss.
They don't like to break rules, but they like to bend them.
No, I get it. They're the committee. They can do whatever they want. But, I mean, you have Georgia, who would have one loss at that point. They lost to Auburn, who was a top 10 team at the time they played them. You have Miami or Clemson, who will either be undefeated Miami, or they'll be one-loss Clemson, who they love. You'll have Oklahoma at 11-1. If you leave Oklahoma, I mean, you can't leave Oklahoma out. You can't leave Wisconsin out. You can't leave Oklahoma out. I mean, they won their respective conferences. Wisconsin will be 13-0 at that point.
Yeah, you can't put a winless Big Ten champ out.
Well, not a winless. You can't put an undefeated.
Yeah.
I can put a winless team out. I have no problem doing that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's the situation that happens. I can't put Alabama in. I can't. I mean, I'm not in the committee, but there's no way.
They shouldn't be in.
If they put Alabama in that scenario, where that scenario specifically happens, that's rigged. That's bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
I think that should be Georgia, Wisconsin, ACC winner, and Oklahoma.
I tend to lean towards that way, too, but we'll see what happens in the next couple weeks to come.
I mean, that's tough because a one-loss Alabama team in the SEC championship game probably should be in there, but I think that's the ultimate call. I'm sure Nick Saban will be calling for 8 at that point.
Yeah.
You know. So there were stuff's about to get screwy. I don't know. I hope it goes the way I want it to go, but stuff's about to get a little screwy.
I think so too.
Clemson did their job. Oklahoma beat TCU convincingly, so that's another top 5 win, or TCU's number 6, top 6 win. Wisconsin did their job. USC did their job. Ohio State and Michigan State. You and I were just fapping crazy over the freaking Spartans. I think this game right here is the epitome of our show. The Vegas Squares. We're the fucking squares on this one.
Well, we're there for a reason. So.
Oh my God! Like they didn't even get off the bus. I read articles all week. You know, D'Antonio is not getting any respect. D'Antonio should be ranked higher. You know, D'Antonio's team is far superior in the Big Ten. But D'Antonio's team should be a playoff team. And all I saw was Michigan State walk out and go, "Hold my beer."
Hey, the punter got a lot of practice.
48-3. 48-3.
That's embarrassing.
I had them in teasers. I had them in parlays. I had them teased all the way up to 31 points.
It's pretty bad one.
I had them teased up. I had a top 15 team teased up to 31-point dogs, and they lost. And they fucking lost. I ain't mad, though. Only if you can tell my voice. I'm not mad. 31-point dogs, and they couldn't cover.
It's sad, but
I could get UConn to cover as a dog shit team that could cover 39 points, but I couldn't get a top 12 team to cover 31 points. Yeesh.
That was a rough day.
So yeah, I mean the playoffs are going to be what we need to concentrate on going forward because there's a lot that can happen. I mean there were some other good games, Oklahoma State and a shootout against Iowa State.
Yeah.
But I mean a lot of stuff held really chalky. Like you said, USC did what they needed to do. Wisconsin did what they needed to do. Ohio State won. I mean, granted they can still win the Big Ten and shake things up. And I think that's Urban Meyer's got to keep them motivated. I mean, it's JT Barrett's last year. I mean, I'm sure he would like to come out with a Big Ten championship.
Yeah.
There's no way we can put Ohio State in, even if they win the Big Ten, right?
There'd have to be a lot of shake-up, and I highly doubt that they would still get in with that much.
I mean, they already bumped back up to number 8. That's how much the AP likes them. Yeah. They fell, when they got beat by Iowa, they fell to like 13th.
Yeah.
But they're already back up to number 8. So, it's a hard sell to put a 2-loss team in a playoff.
I think if there is a 2-loss team getting in,
it would be them, obviously. Yeah, of course it would be them.
No, I would lean more towards Auburn, in my opinion.
Well, Auburn would have to beat Georgia again and Alabama. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, they would have to effectively beat See, Alabama's going to come out of this the number 1 playoff seed.
Yeah.
That's easy. They're going to be number 1. Clemson will be number 2. Miami and Oklahoma, something like that. Whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But I think Ohio. Call me crazy, but I think Ohio State's going to be number 7 in the playoff rankings.
Coming in, yeah. Leaning towards something like that.
They obviously
the committee likes them.
They had a better week than Georgia. They had a better week than Notre Dame. They're better than Oklahoma State. They had a better week than TCU. They're better than USC. They're not better at this point than Auburn, Wisconsin, Clemson, Oklahoma, Miami, and Alabama. So I think they come in at 7. I think, man. If they run the table, they play Michigan and Illinois. Those are 2 wins more than likely, unless they just forget to get prepared for those games. They play Wisconsin. They're going to beat a top 5 team.
Could stir things up.
I don't know. If they beat it, okay. So then you beat Wisconsin. So now Ohio State's the 2-loss conference champion. You have Alabama. The SEC champion will be Alabama or Georgia or Auburn. So you have an SEC champion. You have an ACC champion. You have an Oklahoma. Ohio State could get in there.
It would take a lot, but
Ohio State could get in there.
They're not fully out.
They're not fully out, but they need to run a serious gauntlet. And where's UCF? UCF's 9-0. What the hell's going on?
Yeah,
they got no shot. They got no shot to playoff. No, I know. I'm rooting for them, but
it would be nice to see a team like that go in. But
they're a good case for an 8-team playoff because they need to have the 5 power conference champions. Just no doubt about it.
And
1 group of 5 champion and 2 at-large bids.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. I mean, I know that we said, with the BCS, we need a team playoff. We got our playoff. Now we need a bigger playoff. I mean, I don't want to look at a March Madness situation where we're having 64 teams try to win a national title.
I lean towards more 6 or 8 and be done with that.
Yeah, I look at college football as more of the best team in the country or one of the 2 best teams in the country should win the national title.
Yes.
Whereas the football, like NFL football, the team who gets hot at the right time. Bless you. The team who gets hot at the right time or the team who has the best run can win a Super Bowl. That's a little bit different, I think the playoff, as much as I hate the 4 works. Yeah. The 4 best teams. And now, does it mean that the 5th and 6th teams couldn't win a national title? No, but I mean, you got to, between scheduling, winning, and just leaving it up in the hands of the committee, you've got to have a little bit of luck on your side, but you've got to schedule properly. If UCF beat a couple of ranked teams in there,
they might make that discussion. It's like Western Michigan last year.
I mean, UCF has beat a ranked team. Memphis was ranked when they played them.
Yes.
They beat Maryland on the road, which now doesn't look like that great of a win. They beat Navy when right after Navy was ranked.
Yeah.
They're going to play a USF team, which is unfortunately not ranked anymore.
Yeah.
Which they should be, but they kind of blew it. I mean, that's the problem with these group of 5 teams is if you lose a game, you're gone. You're like off the map.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. They don't have a chance, but I think they're a strong case for having an 8-team playoff.
I absolutely agree. It'd be nice to see a...
Well, it's a big thing for schools, too.
Yeah. It'd be nice to see an undefeated team like that sneak into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it's good for money, good for the business for that school. It's good for recruiting for any school. Hey, you have a chance every year to play in the playoff.
Yeah.
If we can be the best group of 5 school, you can play in the college football playoffs.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's got to be good for recruiting. It starts to even out the league a little bit, and it gives chances teams that really don't have a threat of a national title contention. It gives them a chance.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't have a problem with handing UCF or teams like that. I don't have a problem. I mean, obviously, I want UCF, but I'm saying I don't have a problem with conferences like the American, conferences like Conference USA,
the Mountain West,
the Mountain West, the MAC, the Pac, or not the Pac-12, but the Mid-America. Yeah, the MAC is the Mid-America, Mountain West. Who am I thinking? I'm missing somebody. The Sun. Well, maybe not the Sun Belt. We can probably keep the Sun Belt out of it.
Florida Atlantic.
Oh, no, they're in the Conference USA now.
Are they?
Sun Belt is Troy, Georgia State, Appalachian State. So
Appalachian State.
Yeah, you only know them because of Michigan. So, I mean...
I was happy that day.
Of course. But point being is you give those guys a chance. I mean, they might get their doors blown off most years, but, hey, their step up it helps for recruiting. If you start evening out the recruiting process, those group of 5 teams might not be getting their doors blown off every year. So I don't know. It makes a strong argument for an 8-team playoff with a team like UCF this year. Like you said, Western Michigan last year, teams like Boise and TCU before they became who they are now. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's how it starts. That's what you want your program to be. If you're UCF, you want to be Boise State. You want to be TCU. And the only way to get there is scheduling and beating teams.
Yes.
So the next few weeks of the playoffs in college football, or the next few weeks of the season, will impact the playoffs. Will be fun. So I'll be interested to see how that's going to shape up. Any parting thoughts on the weekend that was in football?
A lot of stir up, a lot of disappointments for us, as well as a lot of exciting college football, as well as some very good pro football.
Yeah, I think every week in the NFL is always unpredictable, and every once in a while a week in college becomes as unpredictable as we had last week, or at least in my opinion. Because I obviously had Notre Dame covering, that was incorrect. I obviously had Michigan State covering, that was incorrect.
I had the other side on the Miami game.
Yeah, but we did have a pretty good sharp pick in the Auburn spot, so props to us. So.
Yep.
So all right.
Like always, you can take it to window or.
Take it to the window and then light it on fire, Michigan State. Light it on fucking fire.
Yep. Ain't that true?
All right. Well, on that note, we will sign off. We thank you for listening. Once again, check us out on all of our social media outlets. We have SoundCloud. We have iTunes. Search Vegas Squares Podcast on both of those. We have Twitter at Vegas Squares, Instagram Vegas Squares Podcast, Facebook.com/Vegas Squares. And also the Vegas Squares website, www.vegassquares.com. We have many places for you to reach us. Give us feedback. Send us an email at vegassquares@gmail.com. And let us know what you want to hear, what you want to talk about. If you have any input for the show, please give us a shout on one of our social media outlets. For Anthony, I am Aaron. We are signing out. Have a great night.